March 2024. A country in the heart of Africa, Niger. The military government appears on television and announces to the world, American forces will leave our country immediately. 1,000 soldiers, years of operations, counter-terrorism agreements, all ended in an instant. But here's the shocking part. As the Americans were leaving, the Russians were arriving. And this wasn't just Niger. The same story repeated in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in the Central African Republic, even in Saudi Arabia. Similar signals were emerging. Something was shifting, something big, and America couldn't see it. Everyone thought Russia was isolated, crushed under sanctions, its economy collapsing. But the reality was completely different. Russia was expanding quietly, systematically, and nobody was even looking. First came Mali. French forces had been in the country since 2013, 5,000 troops fighting terrorism, stability operations. Then the military government made an announcement, leave, the French left. But the vacuum didn't last. Wagner Group arrived, Russian trainers, Russian weapons, Russian flags began flying over Malian bases. Burkina Faso followed the same script, coup, new government. French soldiers told goodbye, Russians said hello. And then Niger, March 16, 2024. The announcement that should have shocked Washington, Airbase 201 near Agadez, built with American money, 110 million in infrastructure, state-of-the-art facilities for counter-terrorism operations across West Africa. The Nigerian military spokesperson appeared on national TV. Clear, direct, no ambiguity. The government of Niger has decided to revoke the agreement concerning the status of United States personnel. Within weeks, American forces began packing. By September 2024, the last U.S. troops departed. Here's what makes this a power shift, not just a withdrawal. Russian military personnel arrived within days of the American announcement, not thousands at first, just a few hundred. But they came with something different. No lectures about democracy, no demands to restore civilian rule, just an offer, security cooperation, weapons, training, support for the military government exactly as it exists. By mid-2024, Russian forces were operating from the same airbase Americans had just vacated. Same facilities, same strategic location. American presence replaced by Russian presence within months. Think about that for a moment. 4 countries across the Sahel and Central Africa, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Central African Republic, all expelled Western forces between 2022 and 2024. All invited Russian military presence. All now have Russian security cooperation as their primary external relationship. This happened in under 3 years. 3 years to undo 60 years of French and American presence in this critical region. And the mechanism is identical in every case. Military government takes power. Western countries demand return to democracy. Russia offers support with no political conditions. Military government chooses Russia. America says, restore civilian rule or we limit cooperation. Russia says, we'll work with you exactly as you are. Which offer do military governments prefer? The one that doesn't threaten their power. But Africa is just one theater. Let me tell you what Russia did simultaneously in the Middle East. Because the pattern isn't regional, it's global. Saudi Arabia, America's closest Middle East ally for 75 years. The relationship that anchored U.S. strategy since Franklin Roosevelt met King Ibn Saud in 1945, January 2024. Saudi Arabia officially joined BRICS, the bloc led by Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, a grouping explicitly designed as an alternative to Western-dominated institutions. America's closest Arab ally joined a bloc that Russia co-leads. But that's just formal membership. Let me tell you what Saudi Arabia has been doing with Russia, specifically OPEC+, the organization that coordinates oil production between OPEC members, led by Saudi Arabia, and non-OPEC producers led by Russia. Saudi Arabia and Russia together control production decisions affecting roughly 40% of global oil supply, 2022 and 2023. President Biden asked Saudi Arabia to increase oil production to lower gasoline prices for American consumers. What did Saudi Arabia do? They coordinated with Russia to cut production instead. Oil prices stayed high. American consumers paid more at the pump. Saudi Arabia aligned with Russia against explicit American requests. That's not alliance hedging, that's choosing Russian coordination over American preferences on the most critical economic issue. Arms deals. Saudi Arabia bought Russian S-400 air defense systems, the same systems that got Turkey partially kicked out of NATO's F-35 program. Saudi Arabia is buying them despite American objections. Russian nuclear cooperation. Rosatom, the Russian state nuclear company, signed agreements to help Saudi Arabia develop nuclear energy infrastructure. The country that was supposed to be America's anchor in the Middle East is buying Russian weapons, coordinating with Russia on oil prices against American interests, and joining Russian-led organizations. United Arab Emirates also joined BRICS in January 2024, expanding trade with Russia despite Western sanctions, hosting Russian business fleeing sanctions. Dubai became a haven for Russian money after 2022. Egypt, the largest Arab country, joined BRICS, expanding Russian arms purchases. Russia is building Egypt's first nuclear power plant at El Dabaa, 4 reactors, $25 billion project, Russia financing it, Russia constructing it. Across the Middle East, Russian arms sales exceeded $18 billion between 2018 and 2024. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Iraq, buying Russian weapons when historically they bought American or European. Russia's role in OPEC Plus gives Moscow direct influence over oil prices. When Russia and Saudi Arabia agree to cut production, oil prices rise globally. This affects inflation everywhere, including in the United States. Russia has more influence over global oil prices in 2024 than America does, despite America being the world's largest oil producer. The Middle East, where American influence was overwhelming for 75 years, is now contested space where Russia has equal or greater influence on key issues. But here's what makes this a full power shift: the Russia-China partnership. They announced no limits cooperation in February 2022, right before Russia invaded Ukraine. Western analysts dismissed it as rhetoric. Watch what they actually built. Russia-China trade hit $240 billion in 2023. By 2024, it reached $245 billion. That's a 67% increase from 2021 levels. While Russia is under the most comprehensive Western sanctions in history, their trade with China is exploding. Over 90% of Russia-China trade settles in yuan and rubles, no dollars. They build payment systems that bypass SWIFT, bypass dollar clearing, bypass Western financial infrastructure entirely. Russia provides energy to China: oil, gas, coal, about $100 billion annually. China provides manufactured goods to Russia: machinery, electronics, consumer products, another $145 billion. It's a closed loop. Currency circulates between them without ever touching dollars. Military exercises. Russia and China conduct joint naval drills in the Pacific, Mediterranean, even near Alaska. Joint bomber patrols, intelligence sharing, technology cooperation. Diplomatic coordination. They vote together at the UN. They coordinate positions on virtually every major international issue. They present a unified front against Western policies. BRICS expansion. Russia and China co-led the expansion that brought in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran in 2024. They're building an alternative bloc that now represents 37% of global GDP and 46% of global population. This isn't two countries cooperating occasionally. This is a systematic partnership designed to create an alternative to the American order. And here's the evidence: UN voting patterns. In 2015, American positions got support from about 50% of countries. By 2024, American positions get support from maybe 30-35%. Russia-China positions often get 40-45% support. America is a minority voice at the UN now. Military base access. American troops stationed abroad, roughly 170,000 in late 2024, down from 220,000 in 2019. Bases closing or reducing in Africa, Middle East, even discussions about reductions in Europe and Asia. Russian military presence expanding. Bases or access in Syria, Libya, Central African Republic, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Sudan. Arms sales. American weapons sales globally stagnant or declining. Russian arms sales growing. Chinese arms sales growing rapidly. Economic partnerships. China is now the largest trading partner for 120 plus countries. Russia supplies critical energy and resources to dozens more. Every measurable indicator shows the same trend: American influence declining, Russian and Chinese influence rising. In 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Western consensus was that comprehensive sanctions would isolate Russia, collapse their economy, end their global influence. The opposite happened. Russia's economy contracted 2.1% in 2022, painful but not collapse. By 2023, Russian economy grew 3.6%. By 2024, another 3.6% growth. Under the most severe sanctions ever imposed, Russia's economy is growing faster than most European economies. Russian oil exports found new markets. China and India buying at discount, Turkey buying, Africa buying, Russia's oil export revenue in 2024 is actually higher than pre-war levels. Russian influence expanded geographically. Africa, Middle East, Latin America, Central Asia, while supposedly isolated, Russia built partnerships across every region. The sanctions that were supposed to destroy Russian power failed, and every country watching learned something. American economic weapons aren't decisive. You can survive American sanctions and even thrive if you have alternative partners. This broke the fear. For decades, countries feared American sanctions because they seemed fatal. Now they've seen Russia survive, Iran survived, Venezuela survived. The fear is gone. And without fear of consequences, countries choose partners based on who offers better terms. Increasingly, Russia and China offer better terms than America. The primary tool of American power has been proven ineffective. Here's what 2030 looks like if current trends continue. Russian military presence in 20+ African countries. French and American presence largely withdrawn or minimal. Russian strategic partnerships across the Middle East. Close coordination with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt on energy, weapons, nuclear technology. Russia-China partnership deepening. $400+ billion annual trade. Complete alternative payment systems, joint military capabilities, combined influence rivaling American influence in most regions. BRICS expanded to 15 to 20 members representing 60% of global population and 50% of world GDP. American strategic influence limited to core allies Europe, Japan, Australia, South Korea, maybe 30% of global population, still important, still powerful, but not dominant. This is what a full power shift looks like, not American collapse, but reduction from global dominance to regional power with global reach, but not global primacy. Watching Niger expel American troops while Russian forces arrive at the same base within weeks. Watching Saudi Arabia coordinate with Russia against American interests. Watching African countries systematically replace Western presence with Russian presence. All happening simultaneously while Washington assumes influence will naturally return. Russia's latest moves didn't create American strategic decline. They revealed it, made it visible, turned gradual erosion into an observable shift. The power has shifted, the influence has fallen, and Russia, despite sanctions, despite isolation, despite Western opposition, is the one who pushed the shift fastest.